What if I told you that the storm you're facing right now isn't a roadblock to your vision? Whether it's divorce, whether it's a diagnosis, whether it's a bad day or a bad week, but instead of it stopping you from building your vision, it's actually a part of building. Because when everything in your life or your business feels like it's falling apart, our businesses don't get to pause. But here's what nobody is talking about. How do you keep building your business and building your vision when you can barely hold it together? Welcome to the Mind of George Show, or welcome back to the Mind of George Show, where entrepreneurs discover that true scaling isn't about just strategies hacked or tactics. It's about aligning your mindset, your message, and marketing to create sustainable growth that feels authentic and aligned to who you are. I help you cut through the noise to help you build a business that matters and make money and an impact doing it. And in today's episode, this one's just true to my heart. We're getting real about the 3-brick rule for building in chaos or storms, one that I'm currently using right now. Why perfect conditions are a myth, how you can build your vision without burning out, even when it feels like the whole world is collapsing around you, and how to convert chaos into momentum. Because here's what I've learned. Growth does not happen after the storm passes. It happens right in the middle of the storm. And today I'm going to break down exactly how to keep building even when everything around you feels like it's falling apart. And so if you're navigating personal challenges while running your business, if you feel stuck waiting for the right time to move forward, if you are really ready to turn those storms into strength or shift your perspective to be able to keep growing and coming out the other side of it, this episode is for you. And I don't think any of us are immune to this because I found some statistics. 92% of entrepreneurs feel overwhelmed by multiple responsibilities. Only 7% of entrepreneurs seek support when struggling. And I talk about this in the episode and how to fix it. And so some things to remember. The storm, as hard as this is to say, and as much as it belongs on a fortune cookie, is actually strengthening us for what's coming. But our job is not to build the whole house overnight. It's just to build the 3 bricks that I talk about in today's episode. Really excited to share this one with you. So without further ado, let's get into the show. Your business doesn't get to pause just because your life just exploded. And when everything around you is either on fire or it feels like it's on fire, the question is, how do you keep building the thing that God or your calling gave you? Because for me, God assigns our calling, but he doesn't take into account our personality or how it's going to feel in the situation. But how do we hold the vision without falling apart? Because this episode today is for the entrepreneur, myself included, who's walking through grief, chaos, confusion, but still feels called to build, still feels called to execute their vision, still feels called to show up every day as an entrepreneur. And the storm could be anything. It could be a diagnosis. It could be a divorce. It could be what some would describe a dark night of the soul. This will give you the truth, the tools, a strategy, and permission to keep going. Because real life doesn't pause for business plans, and real life happens. But too many entrepreneurs are silently drowning while trying to maintain appearances. And this is something that I've not only navigated, but I'm still navigating right now. And the one thing that I always swore with this podcast is that I would be authentic. And all too often, I even forget about that. And I've been on calls with clients galore in the last couple of weeks, and it feels like it's in the air. And the more we can be authentic, the more we can be ourselves, the more we can acknowledge that life still happens and our vision still gets to be built, but we get to be a human in the process. I feel like the faster everybody gets to the results that they're looking for. Because I think there's this giant myth that exists, and I know I believed this myth for a long time. And it's called the myth of perfect conditions, right? There's this lie that we accidentally tell ourselves. And Jamie Smart wrote a book on this called The Little Book of Clarity. And the lie is this: I'll build when things calm down. I'll focus on my business when this storm passes. I'll just wait it out and it'll handle itself. I'll start going to the gym when I make X amount of money. I'll start focusing on my friendships when this number happens. And this is why it's a lie, because those things never do. That's the spoiler of the story. Because what I've learned, and I feel so humbled in this right now, I've had this podcast for years. I've been coaching for almost 2 decades. And I've said things that I've understood logically, that I believed in my soul, that I was also executing. And I've fallen into the trap of thinking that there was a finish line. And I don't believe that a finish line is ever the goal, because it means I'm no longer here. But what I have learned and what I believe in my core is that growth doesn't happen after the chaos. Growth happens in the middle of the chaos or in the middle of the storm. Because I believe that life and business and entrepreneurship and parenting is truly a test of stewardship, not timing. It's a test of how do we look at the situation in front of us? How do we respond to what we are presented? How do we show up when there's a challenge that we never expected, but it still shows up? It's not about waiting for the perfect time or the perfect conditions. It's about making the current time and the current conditions perfect by shifting our perspective and how we see them, while honoring the feelings that we're having in our body, but not allowing those feelings or those thoughts to get in the way of our growth and our progress. And I said it at the beginning of this episode, that God assigns us our calling, but he doesn't take into account our personality. And this is a line that I heard at church yesterday with incredible guest pastor, Tim Ross, who I've watched his podcast. I love his clips. And he was telling this incredible story about how he was the lead pastor of his church for 7 years and knew it was going to be his calling. And then one day God said, "Hey, you're done." And he ugly cried for days and days and days. And he was talking about obedience and following the path. Short story, I will link the entire sermon in the episode if you would like to watch it. Whether you're a Christian or not, it doesn't matter. The message is so powerful and I invite you to watch it. But one of the things that he said is that God assigns the calling, just doesn't take into account his personality, because he said he spoke about this time when he got called to become a lead pastor. And he's like, I'm an introvert. I don't like speaking in front of people. Actually, speaking in front of all of you right now is draining my battery. And he was like, but the calling was for me to go do it and then to grow in that process. And I think that that is the biggest invitation that we all have as humans, as parents, as friends, but most importantly, as entrepreneurs. And this is definitely a trap that I used to fall into, where I used to wait for a moment, or I used to wait for the timing. And truthfully, now the biggest breakthroughs in my life come from stillness and space. And I also used to wait for that stillness. And now my focus is to create that stillness even when I'm in the midst of the storm. Because I've learned that the only thing that scales as you scale yourself and you scale your business is you scale your responsibility and you scale the pressure. And that pressure, that responsibility can feel like a massive storm, like an F5 hurricane, this massive thing, waves crashing against the shore. And we don't have any control over the storm, but we 100% have control over our perspective, our actions, and our behaviors while we're in the middle of that storm. And so what I have learned is to use the storm as a permission slip to pause, but then to find an executable strategy, an executable framework for me to be able to rely on, right? You've heard me talk about one bite at a time, one move at a time, the wedge of expectations, which is finding these bricks in our life that are going to move the needle even in the midst of a storm, and being able to commit to them consistently. Because when life is in chaos, when life is in breakdown, when life is lifing, which life happens all the time, and it feels like more often than not lately, the strategy must get really, really simple. And so the way that I've broken this down is I came up with what I call the tornado strategy. And the tornado strategy is laying bricks in the middle of a storm. And I'm going to lay this out in the 3-brick rule. So it is just simply a 3-brick rule. And this is a strategy to use when it's noisy, when it's stormy, when the winds are there, right? And I'm speaking metaphorically. You know what I'm talking about. Clients are leaving left and right. You feel like you don't have the capacity to show up. You're drowning in your inbox. Your to-do list is never ending. You're having employee turnover issues. You name it. You name the symptom, but it's anything that is making us feel like all we want to do is crawl and cover our head in a hole and disappear. That's what I'm talking about metaphorically when I say it's stormy or it's windy. And when there are storms happening, whether little storms, medium storms, or giant storms that feel like they're going to end everything, when everything feels that level of overwhelm, There are just 3 bricks that we get to focus on building every single day. And I said day, not once a week, not once a month, but every single day. And here are the 3 bricks. This is the 3 brick rule of how to navigate or stay calm, still, and make progress in the middle of a giant storm. Brick number 1 is the brick for your soul. Brick number 2 is the brick for your business. And brick number 3 is the brick for your people. And so, number 1, the brick for your soul. This is where you tune into stillness every day. For me, it's a prayer. For some, it's silence. For some, it's walking. For some, it's working out. For some, it's journaling. For some, it's meditating. For some, it's yoga. But it's that brick that when we feel like the entire storm is consuming us and that we can't do anything, that we grab and we say, but this brick is mine. I always control this brick. I control my ability to tune into this. I can pull my car off to the side of the road. I can close my eyes and I can take deep breaths. I can take a step away from my laptop. I can go sit out in nature and I can pray. I can take my shoes off and go barefoot outside and get present and grounded. So the first brick is the brick for your soul. The second brick is the brick for your business. And this is one needle moving activity. Maybe it's one that's been getting put off or moved. Maybe it's one that you're there and you have, but you haven't created time to do it. But the brick for your business is that message that you need to send, that invoice that you need to collect, that video that you get to record. For me today, it was actually recording this podcast. But there's the brick for your business. That's the second brick. And then the third brick is the brick for your people. And the brick for your people is important because when things get stormy, if you're anything like me as an entrepreneur, you self-isolate. And I self-isolate sometimes because I realize that my friends are going to hold me accountable to laying my first 2 bricks. And so the brick for your people is love, time, or attention. And so that third brick is to pour into the people who pour into you. To pour into the people who pour into you. Sending a message to your best friend. Reaching out to an entrepreneur and telling them what you're up against and needing some support. Giving something to them and pouring into somebody. Offering a 15-minute consult for somebody when you feel like your whole business is on fire. Right? There's this brick where you're intentionally pouring into other people that pour into you. They could be pouring into you as a friend. They could be pouring into you as a client. They could be pouring into you as a potential client. They could be pouring into you as a referral. And so the 3 brick rule is simple. When you feel at any moment when you're overwhelmed, right? And we have a model for this called the SOS on how to state change, right? We've done podcasts on this. The team will link it below. It's the SOS podcast. But when we think about these moments where the storm has taken over, right? Where I had ugly cries this morning, ugly cries this morning. And ugly cries because I had nightmares that woke me up, nightmares that I haven't had in a long time. Facing the reality of all the scaffolding falling around me, right? As, being a part-time dad, full-time dad, but only having my son part-time, navigating the realities of a divorce while honoring my ex and us both supporting us, what new life looks like with different habits and routines, what new business looks like, where my schedule changes, where there's just a lot of uncertainty and a lot of instability where the old scaffolding is falling away and the new scaffolding is getting installed piece by piece. It has overwhelmed me. It has caused me to break down in tears. It's also caused me to have joyous moments of clarity and energy and excitement and working with my clients who I love. But there's both happening. And in the midst of that storm, when that storm takes over, my job is to come back to the present and to follow the 3 brick rule. Because my job is not to rebuild the house overnight. My job is not to rebuild the entire house in a day. My job is to rebuild the house brick by brick by brick. And so the first brick is the brick for my soul, which means no matter what's happening, as long as I have breath in my lungs by the grace and glory of God, I have the ability to control my perspective and be in my experience as long as I lay that brick for my soul. The second one is the brick for my business. I might have a never ending to do list that feels like I can never get out of it. But on that list are 1 to 3 to 5 actions and behaviors that if I lay that brick today, that brick is going to give me a different business tomorrow. Could be responding to the text messages that have been put off, could be cleaning out the inbox that has the invoice in it, could be sending that proposal to the client, could be editing those emails that I promised, could be outlining this podcast. But there are bricks that I know that need to be laid in order for me to have the vision that I want. And my job is to go one brick at a time, which then brings me to the third brick. And the third brick is the brick for your people. This brick is the one where I reach out. Today, I sent a message to my incredible partner and also one to my best friend and just bared my soul. I talked to one of my clients and we had shared tears this morning. I love you, Carolyn. Shared tears this morning where she poured into me as my client, where my job is to pour in. And she's like, no, we're family. We pour into each other. And then I just felt this relief and this presence come over me, but only because I was willing to lay that brick. And so when life starts to feel, or business starts to feel overwhelming, or I'll just do these things when the conditions are perfect, our job is to remember that we are the bricklayer of our business and we can lay bricks in the middle of a tornado. And so our job is to follow these 3 bricks, because it's not about rebuilding the entire house. It's just about laying the next brick. And what tends to happen is we start to shift our perspective massively, right? It starts to shift from productivity or checking these boxes to presence, where it's like, holy moly, I've been doing all these habits and actions and behaviors, but they haven't led me to where I want to be. Maybe I should get present and focus on what the right brick would be or what the next brick would be, right? Or it feels like everything is chaotic, but in this moment, laying the brick brings clarity in the moment. Because what we're really doing is we're building our vision in the middle of a storm. Could be the middle of a tornado, could be the middle of a fire. But what we're doing is we're building. And I think there's a lot of power in perspective, because there are moments right now where I feel like my whole life collapsed and everything that I ever knew and everything that I swore I ever wanted is gone. But then on the other side, there are these moments where I feel like now I have everything that I've ever desired. I have close personal friends. I have an incredible relationship with my son. I have an incredible partner and an incredible co-parenting partner in my ex. I have a business where I serve clients that I love and I help them reach the tippity top of their potential. And I get to pour into people and I get to help people. But there's still this emotional toll, the nightmares, right? Where I wake up with fog or fatigue or feeling really fragile. Because like I said in the intro, there's this rat race of keeping up appearances, and I fall victim to it accidentally as well. And the biggest mistake that I've ever made is pretending that everything was fine and not allowing my own humanity, not allowing grace for myself, not allowing myself to be a human, because I've had it wired my whole life that I can only succeed if I'm perfect. I can only succeed if I'm the best at it, if I almost suffer in the process. That I can only succeed if I hold it all together, like I'm that duck where he looks calm on the top, but his feet are running so fast underneath the surface. And trying to build in that state never really works, because it just drains and drains and drains and drains, and there's never enough. And so this pretending that everything is fine is just an avoidant tactic that I used. But then when I look at what actually works, like what actually works for me, what actually moves the needle, what actually has gotten me results in the midst of these storms. And there are so many storms to count. The move to Montana where the business was collapsing, but then we rebuilt it. What happened when I decided to walk away and answer God's calling from a food blog and start over from scratch. What really did work every single time was brutal honesty with myself, but with grace. And that was getting really clear on that when I have a calling, when I have outcome in mind, when I have a vision in mind, there's a good chance it's not going to feel great. It's not going to be like, oh, I love doing that. It's like, oh, I didn't love losing the 100 pounds. I liked the result, but I didn't love going to the gym or reducing my calories or not eating so much chocolate cake. But I chose to do it one brick at a time to be healthy and have this life. And that started with brutal honesty with myself. And then with that honesty, it allowed me to focus on these 3 bricks. And then I was able to scale back those goals of saying, okay, what do I have the capacity to do in this moment? I can send that text message. I can reach out to my team. I can tell my best friend. I can lay that brick for my soul. I can lay that brick for my business, and I can lay that brick for my next person. And that's allowed me personally as a man of faith to lead into God's pace. Because what was happening is there were storms happening around me. And then I was picking up the energy of that storm and I was throwing it on my shoulders. And I said, this is all mine to carry. I have to fix this. 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 And instead of taking any action, all I was doing was stacking the weight greater and greater and greater on my back. And I made myself stuck more. I made myself feel heavier. I made myself feel more burdened. And I tried to carry everything instead of realizing that I wasn't supposed to carry the entire house on my back in one day. I wasn't supposed to carry every brick that would lay the foundation in one trip. I was only supposed to carry the bricks in this moment that were mine for today. And this has been a profound part of the process for me in surrendering, in releasing expectation, in truthfully leaning into God's grace and God's vision for me and for my life. And it's taken me till now. Like this morning, I had a clarity and breakthrough that even as a successful entrepreneur, I was still trying to control things that were always out of my control because it gave me the illusion of stability. It gave me the illusion of safety, but it didn't actually tangibly give me any of those results. And this message that my pastor shared, or Tim Ross shared, was all about how side characters are the main character and how influential side characters can be and how big of a difference they make in the world. And if you're, a Christian or a person of faith, what we were talking about was Acts chapter 9. I believe the gentleman's name was Aeneas, and he's only in the Bible for like 19 verses. And Aeneas is the man who was sent to pray for Saul before he became Paul. And this man's prayer turned somebody that would be considered a modern day terrorist who was persecuting Christians and seeking them out as a Pharisee, and then became Paul, who wrote like 2/3 of our New Testament. And he's only mentioned in the Bible in 19 verses, but yet most of that entire New Testament wouldn't exist if it wasn't for that one man's little actions. And Tim said something that resonated deeply for me. He said, when you love God, you realize that God is the main character and we're just the side character. And I broke down in tears because there's been this pattern in me that I have to have all the answers. I have to be the one who always says yes. I have to be the one to show up all the time. I have to do A, I have to do B, I have to do C. But all they were really was self-sacrificial, and I was never laying any bricks. I was grabbing this massive burden. And I share this just because I promise to always be open and to always be authentic. And I think there's this beautiful intersection that can happen in business, that can happen in life as an entrepreneur, where you can be in the midst of a storm and navigating all of your stuff, but still gifted and called to your vision and building it at the same time while you honor yourself in that process. You can have clients like my clients who I love, Carolyn, I love you dearly, who I can be the best in the world at what I do, at coaching and customer journey and marketing, but still be allowed to cry and be a human being. Only when we get radically honest with ourselves and we lay these 3 bricks at a time. And so the truth is how do you continue to build a vision when you're in the midst of a tornado or in the midst of a fire? And it's truthfully 3 bricks at a time. Some days it might only be 3 bricks. Other days, those 3 turn into 6, turn into 9, turn into 12, and you celebrate yourself in the entire process. But it starts by being aware of these things. And so how do you apply this into your business? How do you apply this into your life if this is landing for you in your life? The question to answer would be this. The question to pray on, or the question to journal on, would be this. Where in your life are you waiting to feel ready instead of building faithfully? A dear friend of mine, Angie Lee, always said this, and she said, ready is a lie, because ready doesn't come, but action does. But where in your life are you waiting for the storm to pass? Where are you waiting for the circumstance to change? Where are you waiting for it to look differently instead of actually taking that step and laying that brick today? And as much as I wish I could answer this question for everybody, it requires what I shared earlier, which is radical self-integrity. And I want to give you a prompt to chew on. I want to give you something to think through. If all you did today was protect your peace and created calmness in the chaos, and you moved 3 bricks forward, right? You moved a brick for your soul, you moved a brick for your business, and you moved a brick for somebody that you love. Would that be enough? Would you celebrate that and see the progress? Would you see that a building or a business or a vision can't be built overnight, but it has to be built over time? Because it's that perspective that allows us to walk in obedience to those bricks. And so I want you to reflect, and I want you to sit with this. Where in your life are you waiting for things to look a certain way or the storm to calm down before you place that brick? And I would invite you to journal, because I have sticky notes and papers in front of me. I don't journal in an actual journal. I literally journal on scrap paper, just so everyone can see this if you're watching this. Bad printer paper, my steps and notes in front of me, or forever sticky notes. But I want you to write it down. And I want to challenge you to write out with clarity what your 3 bricks are for the next 5 days. What is the brick for your soul? What is the brick for your business? And what is the brick for the person that you love? Because in finding those bricks and writing them down, we create them to be reality. And we create them to be reality, we can follow them. And we can lay those bricks and keep building this vision and building our life and building our business in the midst of whatever we're facing. Because the truth is sometimes we don't actually need momentum. Sometimes we need alignment. And to make sure that it's not about how many bricks we lay, it's that we're laying the right bricks in the right place that we actually want to be inside of our vision. Because I think what I've learned in my life, no matter how many times I cry about it, or even when I cried this morning of God, in 41 years, I feel like no one has ever come and laid a brick for me. I haven't had a safety net or a moment to breathe. I've had plenty, but I was looking at the storm the wrong way. Because the storm isn't proof that I'm off track. The storm is the proof that I'm being strengthened to carry what's coming. And I heard somebody say this years ago, and I don't remember who. I would give them credit, and I'm going to butcher it because they said it so much more poignantly than I am about to. But he said, I'm sure you've cried out, God, why is the water so rough? Why am I treading water so far from shore? Why does it feel like I'm barely going to make it, but I know that I can tread this water? Why am I so far out to sea where there's no boats, there's no land, and nobody can see me? And he's like, I imagine if God was answering what he would say, it's because your enemies can't swim and you can. And that always shifts my perspective. Because I realize that this whole game of entrepreneurship and this whole game of life is about stewardship. It's about becoming the person to hold that vision, to lead that team, to scale that company, to coach to that level, to sell the product that works, to figure out these things. But in that process, we get to become the person who can do that. And the only way to become is to go to the gym. And the resistance and the noise and the storms are the gym. These are the things that strengthen us to steward them better. And this podcast, I don't know if this landed for you. I don't know if this resonates with you. This might be one of the episodes, episode 615 of this podcast, where this one is just my diary to myself. Because I realize that this is my life and I love it. But on the days where I fall out of love with it, or I forget that I've prayed for things that I haven't had the character or the foresight or the perspective to maintain, that this is the reminder that I get to come back to. That in order to build a vision in the middle of a storm, my job is to make sure that I'm laying at least 3 bricks every single day. Because if this feels like your season, if you're anything like the conversations I've had this week, where life feels like a tornado, where business feels like a tornado, where it feels hard or chaotic, I see you 100%, and you are not in this alone. But this is yours and my permission slip to build slowly, to build sacredly in alignment, and most importantly, to do it without shame. Because it's nobody else's vision, it's yours. It gets to be your pace. It gets to be your steps. It gets to be in a way that honors you, but allows you to lay bricks in the midst of this storm, because even in the mess, even in the chaos, you are still moving. And I've said this before, that consistency will always trump intensity. And it's important that we always keep laying these bricks. And so my ask of you is this. If I can help you in any way, if you just need an ear, text me. If you have my number, or DM me on Instagram. If you need me to speak into you, if you need me to pray for you, send it my way and I gladly will. I will pray for you. I'll add you to my prayers. I will send you my words of encouragement, but just know that I see you. And if this gave you clarity today, if this gave you a breath of fresh air, if this gave you a really easy framework to start laying bricks, my ask is that you share it with someone else who's walking through the fire. Because your honesty today, your willingness to send it to them today, might be their hope in the middle of their storm. You might be their 3rd brick, but they might be afraid to reach out. And I think it's beautiful when you hit your heart and you're like, I know somebody, that you send it and share it so that they can play the game, lay their brick, and realize that you're both bricks for each other. Because I think the most important part that we have to understand is that perfect conditions are a myth. And our visions and our life, it happens in the mess. And we get to build with our bricks in the mess. Because the 3 brick rule makes it really simple and turns overwhelm into simple, aligned action. Because our presence and our perspective and our willingness to stay on the field is what's going to change the future that we have. Because the actions we take today, the bricks that we lay today, are creating the world that we live in 90 days, 180 days, 365 days in the future. And some days, just 1 brick a day is the momentum that we need. Because chaos is not a sign that we're not in our vision, we're not in our calling. Chaos doesn't cancel our vision or cancel our calling. Chaos doesn't do anything like that. What chaos does is it refines it, it strengthens us, and it helps us focus so that we can keep laying these bricks. And so that's my invitation for everybody today. And my also authentic, honest statement to close the show is that if this landed, I'm so eternally grateful. And if it didn't, just love me gently in the process, because this one might have just been for me and what I'm navigating in the changes. And truthfully, just my reminder for myself on these lessons that I've learned and these situations that I've lived through, to remember those and to remember that this is a beautiful gift to be able to play this game and to do what we do and to do it how we do it. But we're never in it alone. And as long as we keep laying bricks, bite by bite by bite, day by day by day, and those bricks are aligned with our soul first, our business second, and then someone that we love third, there's really no way to lose that game. And so I love you. I appreciate you. I look forward to hearing from you. I hope you have the most beautiful day ever. Remember that relationships will always beat algorithms, especially the one with God, and then your soul, and then your business, and then your people. And by the way, you can change the order of the bricks. That's up to you, but those are the order that I do the bricks. So I'll either see you in the next episode or you will hear me in your earballs. But either way, we're out.